Yeah, it's recording now. Perfect.
All right, so gentlemen, and I guess we're all gentlemen right now, and any ladies who watch later, we'll go ahead and get started with our program tonight. So this class, we're going to be taking a look at actual signs that have come true, and especially related to Al-Masih al-Dajjal, okay? We can talk about, I'm of the opinion that most of them are related to Dajjal, and most of the signs at the end, because Dajjal is one of the, what they call major signs, okay? So we left off with what I consider to be the most important thing in our study, which is that when it comes to signs of the hour, we don't always need to go to a literal interpretation, okay? That we need to sometimes think about if the hadith doesn't make sense to us, like flying donkeys and illiterate people who can read, and then that's a sign that we need to think, okay? We need to think a little deeper. And once again, it's not that Allah can't create flying donkeys and one-eyed cyclops people with kafir written on their forehead. It's not, of course, fa'alul lima yurid, Allah says about himself in the Quran, that he does whatever he wants, whatever he wants. But that if it doesn't make sense to us, in the sense that there's a logical contradiction, right, in the statement, then that means that maybe we should take a look at a metaphorical interpretation. And we said that this is actually a principle of usul. Imam Hamza Yusuf mentions it in his talk on the signs of the hour. Okay, so very important. No prophet was sent, but that he warned himself about the one-eyed liar. Now, guys, let's ask ourselves a question. What is the point of Noah warning his people about Dajjal? You tell me.
To save them. Warn them.
There's no Dajjal during the time of Noah. Dajjal doesn't come until after the Prophet Muhammad.
Well, future generations.
Right, but we have no book from Noah, and the Quran is eventually going to come, and a prophet's going to eventually come and tell us everything we need to know about Dajjal. Why does Noah need to warn his people about Dajjal?
Is it a prophecy?
Why does he need to prophesy about him? What difference does it make to the people of Noah? The people of Noah, guys, remember, are destroyed, except for like a small group that fits on a boat. So, I mean, their reality is they're going to live a life. They're going to get on a boat with Noah. They're going to get off the boat with Noah, and they're going to repopulate the earth until they die. Why would he need to warn those people about Dajjal? You understand now why you should be asking these questions? Because it doesn't make any sense, right? Unless Dajjal is not just a human being that will come at one point in history. That Dajjal is something that the world has to be set up for. Okay? You following me?
Yeah.
Yep.
If a man is supposed to come and dominate the earth, okay, then he must have amazing powers. But we know that he's not really God. He's not really the Rabb. So he has amazing abilities that have to be set up for him. In other words, just like a magician sets up the stage for his magic tricks, the stage has to be set for Dajjal to come and fool people into thinking he is their Rabb. He is their God. Would you agree or disagree?
Is the stage in this instance the signs of the Day of Judgment?
No, we're going to get there. Don't worry. I'm just asking
Okay.
you some questions to get you thinking, okay?
Okay.
So if a man is supposed to rule over the entire world, he would need to be able to communicate with the entire world. Okay? He needs some way to communicate with them. Furthermore, if he's going to travel the entire world, as the hadiths mention about Dajjal, he needs a way to travel the whole world. The world has to be set up in a way for him to do these things. And he's supposed to travel the whole world in 40 days. That's very quickly for a pre-modern person.
Oh, okay.
Okay, do you guys understand now? That's why Noah has to warn his people about Dajjal, because Dajjal is something that's been all the way back since the time of Noah. The world has been preparing for him. Okay? So there was something happening during the time of Noah that was getting the world ready for Dajjal. There was something happening during the time of Solomon, something happening during the time of David, during the time of Jesus, so forth and so on, all the way until today. The world had to be set up so Dajjal can come and impersonate God and be the false Messiah. Now, all you have to do is look throughout history. I'm going to show you guys something real quick. We're going to go to Google real quick, and we're going to type in, stop share for a second while I get the screen loaded. We're going to type in something. Great architect.
Sheikh, does this tie in with the whole flying donkey and the advent of modern technology when it comes to setting up the world? Is that what you were?
Yes,
Gotcha.
that's what I'm getting you guys to, because we're going to look at these hadith very quickly about Dajjal, and we want to see if we can pinpoint this stuff now. I'm sorry I forgot to load this this screen before you guys came. Okay, now I want to show you something. It's very important. Have you guys ever heard of secret societies? Secret societies.
Yeah, like the Illuminati.
Well, I mean, let's pick one that's everybody should know. Okay, have you ever heard of Freemasonry? Mm-hmm. Freemasonry. Okay. They have this thing called the Great Architect of the Universe. Okay. It's a very important concept to them. Now, how does Dajjal symbolize himself, guys? He is one-eyed. You see my screen?
Yes.
This is at the top of a Freemasonic lodge. Okay. What Freemasonry seeks to do is what's called the Great Work. Go look this up as your homework. The Great Work. They're doing some sort of great work. They are Freemasons. What does a Mason do, guys? He builds a structure. Okay? And they're free. Free of what, guys? Possibly free of God's laws. So the Freemason is building the great work, and he worships the great architect of the universe. Okay? And symbolized for them at the top of their building is an eye by itself. Have you ever bothered to look on the back of a dollar bill? You will find a pyramid encapsulated, okay, with the top of it is a triangle with an eye inside of it. One eye, okay? And if you connect a six-sided star over top of it, you will get the word Mason, okay? Because Freemasonry was very, very important in America's foundations, okay? I know this because my one of my uncles, great uncles on my mom's side, was a Freemason. I used to go to the family reunion, and I found his Freemasonic Bible, and I took it one year home with me for an entire year. And inside of it, it gives you explanations of the symbols of Freemasonry, but it also mentions all of the presidents who were involved in Freemasonry. Freemasonry seeks to access the Antichrist, not as a human being, but as someone who exists in the spiritual realm, like the jinn and the angels. The jinn and the angels are here with us right now, guys, but can you see them? Can you hear them? No. They're in a, what we could call a parallel universe with us. Okay? Well, the Antichrist is also, and I'm going to show you a very clear hadith that mentions this, okay? That he exists in another world of space and time until a day comes when he is here like our days, okay? So I'm setting you up because I'm about to bring you these different narrations. Okay. First things, Dajjal has a physical description, guys. That he'll be short, he'll have curly hair like snakes, he'll be well built, he'll most importantly be a Jew, he will be reddish white, very interesting, which is the typical description the Prophet used for the Northern Europeans. And another hadith mentions that he might possibly be kind of hunchbacked. Okay, guys? What do you notice here? Number one, this man has to be Jewish. What just so happens to be the dominant Jewish race on earth today, guys? Let's take a look. If I type in Jewish man in Google, this is what pops up. What you're looking at is an Ashkenazi Jew. There are different types of Jews. There's Sephardic Jews, there's Yemeni Jews, there's Iranian Jews, but then there's the Ashkenazi Jew, which is a European Jew. 9 out of 10 Jews on earth today is a European Jew, okay? Is that by coincidence? Furthermore, take a look at the sides of this guy's head. You see these? This is a command in the Torah for them to grow their sideburns long. Very important, okay? By the way, maybe not everybody on here is an Ashkenazi Jew, but I can type in Ashkenazi Jew and you can see that they pretty much, a lot of them look like this. They are white Europeans. They make up the majority of the Jewish world. They have these curls whenever they're religious. This is the exact description the Prophet is giving you. Isn't it very interesting that he would pick the very type of Jew who near the end of time makes up the majority of them? He doesn't mention that the Dajjal will be a dark-skinned man, like most Jews would have been from the Middle East. Very fascinating. We'll continue. Messenger of Allah said, how long will Dajjal be on the earth? Now, this is where we get into Dajjal being accessible to people, even though he is not physically here. The Prophet says, Arba'un yawman, yawman kasana, wa yawmun kashahr, wa yawmun kajumu'ah. And then finally, وَسَائِرُ أَيَّامِهِ كَأَيَّامِكُمْ, that he will be on the earth for 40 days. A day which is like a year, a day which is like a month, a day which is like a week, and the rest of his days like your days. Guys, I got to ask you something. Is there any such thing as a year that lasts, or a day that lasts a year? Is there anything like a day that lasts a month? Is there anything like a day that lasts a week? No. This is another world of space and time. And Allah mentions this in the Quran, by the way, that a day for Allah is like, you finish the sentence, 1,000 years. Okay? Meaning that for anything that exists outside of our world of space and time, the days are different. For example, in Surah Al-Kahf, and this is very important, this is the surah that helps protect us from Dajjal. The people of the cave, they go to sleep for how long, guys? 300 years. Ask yourself some questions. If I went to sleep for 300 years, guys, just because I'm sleeping, does my hair stop growing? Do my nails stop growing? No. Sleeping people, their hair grows, their nails grow. After 300 years, guys, how long is my hair going to be? Super duper long. How about my nails? They're going to be like these giant spirals on my hand. But yet when the people of the cave wake up after 300 years, they ask each other, how long have you been sleeping? Yoman o ba'da yom, a day or maybe part of a day. They would look at each other immediately and see their hair and their nails, and they'd be like, oh my God, we've been asleep for 300 years. But they didn't see long hair and long nails, did they? Furthermore, Allah says, if you had found them in the cave, it would have horrified you what you saw. It would have scared you. It would have given you ru'b, like horror, terror. Because what you would have been looking at would have terrified you, because you wouldn't be looking at the way space and time is here. You'd be looking at another reality that you don't have any ability to fathom. It would frighten you because they weren't in space and time. Allah took them out of this world of space and time and put them back after 300 years, and they didn't change. The same thing we find in Surah Al-Baqarah, right? With Uzair. He passes by a town. He says, how can Allah bring this town back to life? And then Allah causes him to die for, you finish the sentence, 100 years. And then he brings him back to life. And he shows him how he puts flesh and bones back together, and he brings his animal back to life. But his food, he says, remains the same, because part was taken out of this world of space and time and the other wasn't. I think I've given you plenty of evidence at this point. The point I'm trying to make to you is the Prophet is telling us here that there'll be stages of Dajjal being here in this world, but not as a physical being until the end, because that's when he says, وَسَائِرُ أَيَّامِهِ كَأَيَّامِكُمْ. Then at the end of his mission, he will be here in days like your days, meaning in this world of space and time, the one that we are interacting with. Shall I share something very interesting with you?
Yes.
Jack Parsons. Come up, guys. Very interesting fellow. He was a Satanist. He used to worship the devil. He also was really good friends with a man named Aleister Crowley. Here's some pictures of Jack Parsons dressed very demonically. And there's Aleister Crowley, who was one of the biggest ritual black magicians that's ever lived. You can also look him up for homework. Jack Parsons and this guy were friends. And Jack Parsons was a very smart guy. He used to work for NASA. In fact, he developed the rocket fuel that allowed them to put satellites up in the sky. He wrote an autobiography about himself. He eventually blew himself up in his lab. But in his autobiography, he said that he contacted a demon who he named Belial Dajjal. Would you guys like to know what Belial Dajjal told Jack Parsons, who was developing rocket fuel to put satellites up in the sky? He said, you are helping me.
Sheikh, can I just say something?
Yes.
So I've heard this before, and it's crazy when they hear about it. So some people might be taken back. If you open the Wikipedia page for Jack Parsons and go down to his, go down to something he says, like you'll actually see this, like he says it. If you go to the contents, I think it should be under, it might take some time to find, but if go to the,
well, I mean, here I'm just showing you that this is his Wikipedia page. This is Aleister Crowley, just like I told you, founder of Thelema.
Yeah.
Okay. Aleister Crowley used to contact demons. He wrote in his book about this also. And here we have him talking about it. He said he was involved in Kabbalistic numerology, which is Jewish ritual magic. Okay. He was involved in the occult. Okay. So guys, I'm not making this up. I mean, you can go look this up for yourself. I would not tell you to record this and share it with other people if I was telling you things that weren't true. Not that I think that you think I'm a liar, but I'm telling you, when you go look this stuff up, it's going to blow your mind. Okay. But I'm tying it back into these hadith about the signs of the hour, guys, because it's really important that you understand what the Prophet is trying to tell us here. And Allah knows best. That Dajjal exists in the spiritual realm as something that people can access until he becomes a real person. But what he's doing is he's using people to set up a world in which he can come and rule. He used Jack Parsons. to develop that rocket fuel to get those satellites up. And I'm going to tell you why he did it. Because it's part of him being able to appear to people as God. He uses technology. Okay, so this is the translation of the hadith again. And I also mentioned that some of the meaning that comes out of this is that there will be ruling states in the world that will access Dajjal. Okay, and they will also be used by the Antichrist to set up a world. Now, the Antichrist cannot rule a world that is not easily rulable. A world that has different conceptualizations of times and languages and cultures. He has to set up a mono language, a mono culture, a mono time system. Because as long as the world differs about things, it's very hard for Dajjal to come and easily rule over all of them. Not only that, but we have the very important hadith where Tamim ad-Dari, okay, which is a Palestinian Christian man who converts to Islam during the time of the Prophet. He tells the Prophet about an experience he has where he sailed for 30 days. He landed on an island. He was greeted by a spy, al-Jassasa. He was taken to a ruined monastery to a powerful man who was chained. He was informed by that man that he was Dajjal, but he was told that soon he would be released. Later, Dajjal informed him that the Sea of Galilee was drying up and that he would eventually emerge. Now, Tamim ad-Dari, how does he access Dajjal if Dajjal is not a human being yet? How is he able to interact with him? People will tell you that Dajjal has not yet been released, guys.
In a dream?
Dajjal, yes. In other words, there's a spiritual realm. All of you access the spiritual realm every night when you sleep. When you have dreams, that's the spiritual world. It's a very real world in the sense that you become frightened in your dream. You can wake up and feel frightened, but in reality, it was just a dream. So it has impacts on this world. So these people like Jack Parsons and Aleister Crowley and many, many, many scientists throughout history were involved in ritual magic. Ritual magic is a way to achieve these dream-like states while you're conscious so that you can access the spiritual world. If you guys want to know how sihr works, how sorcery and black magic works, all it is a person accessing the world of the jinn. Okay, and they do it through rituals. Okay, don't go look up how to do these. Okay, that's not beneficial knowledge for you. Okay, because you have no business playing around with that stuff. That's knowledge that will harm you. In Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah tells you very clearly not to do that stuff. And he mentions how the shayateen taught people magic in Surah Al-Baqarah. Okay, and that when they were taught the magic, that it caused them to commit kufr and that they would have no share in the hereafter for learning this knowledge. Don't go learn ritual magic. It will destroy your afterlife. Okay. But I'm just telling you what they're doing. So the ultimate demonic force that people seek to access is Dajjal. And that's what Freemasonry is teaching people, is how to access the Antichrist. But I'm just trying to tell you that even Tamim ad-Dari has a dream or a vision about Dajjal. He's not trying to access Dajjal, but he has this vision. Allah gives him this vision, this dream, which he narrates as an actual experience.
Sheikh,
Okay?
I found the part where, like, if you want to go there,
Okay,
to the
we'll go there.
Wikipedia page.
All right, we're here.
So go down till you hit the title, work for Israelis and espionage accusations. So keep going down.
Of course he works for Israel. Here we go.
Yeah.
Israelis and espionage.
So go down to the third paragraph.
This guy's got a huge Wikipedia page.
Yeah, it's right here, third paragraph.
Yeah, I see it. I mean, look at what this guy was doing. Unable to pursue his scientific career without a wife and devoid of friendship, Parsons decided to return to occultism. Okay, remember ritual magic, and embarked on a sexually based magical operation with prostitutes. Of course, Another thing that you have to do, and don't ever do this, guys, I'm just telling you this so you understand what's happening, is that in order to access these shayateen, you have to commit evil sins. So look what Jack Parsons is doing. He's engaging in a ritual magic with prostitutes, okay? And he was intent in formally following the ritual practices of Thelema, which is the religion of Aleister Crowley, the Satanist, and performing the cross of the abyss, attaining a union with the universal consciousness, or all understood in basically the Antichrist, the Thelemic mysticism, and a master of the temple. Following the apparent success in doing so, Parsons recounted having an out-of-body experience invoked by Babylon. Remember, guys, where do they learn magic? Babel. Surah Al-Baqarah. Who astrally transported him to the biblical city of, I don't know how to pronounce that. I'm not going to try. An experience he referred to as a black pilgrimage. Notice how they have this inverted concept of the Islam, where we have the Hajj pilgrimage, but he has the black pilgrimage. Accompanying Parsons to the Oath of Abyss was his own Oath of the Antichrist. Remember, this guy developed rocket fuel for NASA, guys, which was witnessed by another gentleman, and he professed to embody an entity named Belinan Armalis al-Dajjal, the Antichrist, who am come to fulfill the law of the beast 666, which is Aleister Crowley. Okay, guys, he's not the only one. Many scientists and thinkers throughout history have done the same thing. They're trying to access the Antichrist. The Antichrist gives you gifts, okay? Just like, for example, when we worship Allah, Allah gives you gifts. He gives you ajr, okay? If you do Allah's work in building the kingdom of God on earth, okay, which is the Khalifa state, okay, then Allah rewards you. He sends you rain. He gives you crops. He gives you all the things that you're supposed to have, okay, that you want. He gives you kingship. He gives you everything, dominion over the earth. Dajjal also rewards people. He gives you scientific knowledge of how to build technology that will benefit you, right? Time the technology will benefit him. He doesn't give you anything except that it will benefit him when he comes, okay? Now, remember, Dajjal is on the earth for a day, which is like a month. This is a period of time and space. One of the things Dajjal has to do in order to rule over the world is he has to get the world on the same page. Prior to the British Empire colonizing the world, it was very hard to get people on the same page linguistically, educationally, economically. However, when Britain colonized most of the earth, remember, guys, Britain colonized most of the earth. They transformed the economic system to a riba-based economic system based on paper money, the sterling pound. They transformed the education system, okay? Transformed the clothings and cultures of most people on earth. People began to dress like the British. Now, this is the first time in history for something like this, where the entire world unites around a certain monoculture, a mono-economic system. And then English becomes the lingua franca of the world. That was the first stage of Dajjal's mission. Notice that when Tamim ad-Dari has a vision of Dajjal, Dajjal is accompanied by a beast called Jassas. Britain, of all countries, specializes in the art of spying. It has more CC cameras than any nation on earth. In other words, it's the most spied on society by its own government. And notice the spies that are involved in the collapse of the early Ottoman Caliphate. Britain was very, very instrumental in the destruction of the Ottoman Khalifa. And they used spies like Lawrence of Arabia to invoke Arab nationalism amongst the Arabs, to have them rebel against the Ottoman Turks, destroying the Khalifa. So spying is very important to this nation. But then World War II would eventually happen, and another nation would take over the world with imperial ambitions, and that is the United States today, which is like a month. Now, in the United States, you have a city called DC, which is encapsulated in an inverted pentagram. For homework, guys, and I'm giving you lessons to go look this stuff up. Go look up the inverted pentagram, 5-sided star, that is encapsulated in the street design of Washington, D.C. Inverted pentagrams are very important in ritual magic, guys. A pentagram will be drawn, a circle is drawn around it, and a magic ritual will take place in which demons are summoned. Okay? Once again, what is the goal of America in doing something like that? Taking its capital city and designing an inverted pentagram in the street plan. Very interesting. Also notice how instrumental Britain and the United States are in the creation of Israel. Dajjal cannot come unless Israel is there. The Jews will not accept a Messiah unless Israel is ruling the world. So Britain introduces the Balfour Declaration, which gives Jews the right to establish a state in Palestine. And notice that America comes later on, is staunch supporter of Israel. Even today, you saw Trump and Biden both trying to be the biggest Zionists they could possibly be during the election, right? Because they're trying to win AIPAC, the Jewish lobby in America's support. And notice Trump immediately tries to get the world to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. Biden's going to come along and he's not going to change that, guys. He's not. He's not going to try and change. That'll be one thing Trump did that he won't change. Take my word for it. Now, here we get into more hadith about prophecies, okay? It says that Dajjal will be traveling the earth on a donkey, made of iron, traveling so fast that as it leaves a cloud in its wake, he will hop between the sky and the earth. Okay, we explained that this is possibly jet aircraft. Dajjal will step into the ocean, but it will only wet his ankles. Now remember, guys, do we know any human beings that are so tall and so big that they will be able to step into the ocean and it will only wet their ankles? No. No. What kind of creature that big would be able to ride on a donkey anyway? You see how these things, they don't even make sense until you try to understand what is being conveyed here. The prophet is trying to tell you that unlike the past, when it was very difficult for you to explore the oceans, Dajjal will come in a way where exploring the oceans will be no problem whatsoever, using the language of it only wetting his ankles, like treading water in a shallow pool. It's easy for him. So we bring in parentheses here submarine aircraft or submarines, okay, which can now go into the deepest parts of the ocean. For those who obey him, he will cause it to rain. You guys ever looked up in the sky and seen this before? One of the first things that woke me up, and when I say woke me up to that there's something very strange happening on this earth today, is I, for some reason, discovered this website back in 2006 called chemtrails.com. Chemtrails.com documents this phenomenon you see here on the screen, which is contrails, okay, we could say the exhaust of planes. Normally, when a plane flies through the air, it leaves a trail behind it. This is the freezing of water particles coming out of the jet engine. But that usually dissipates quite quickly if it's a normal jet contrail. However, I noticed after I went to this website, which you see here on the right of your screen, which is that these contrails persist in the sky all day long. And in fact, they form patterns where you see like multiple trails all at the same altitude. And when you live in a small city like Greensboro, you're like, our airport doesn't get this busy. So, I mean, when you see things like this, where it's like hundreds of them in the sky, then you have to ask the question, what is going on here? Well, the eventual conclusion I came to after years of studying this subject is that this is rain creation. How do I know? During the Beijing Olympics, an article was printed, and it may still be available, where Beijing was shooting rockets up above the city to create rain. Why were they doing it? Because the pollution level was too high in Beijing for the athletes to compete. Furthermore, I read an article about the UAE, another Antichrist worshiping country. And the UAE had allegedly created around 80 rainstorms in the desert. Rain creation, guys. Technology. We continue. And I'd be interested to see one of you research weather modification and the scientists who came up with it and what kind of we're involved in.
Sheikh, you're going on.
Because it will rain, the animals will grow fat. I'm sorry?
I'm saying like your voice sometimes is going
Say again?
Off. Your voice sometimes is going off.
Did you say weather modification and what else?
I'm sorry, guys. Give me one. Looking at stuff. Okay. What have you guys missed? Because I don't know.
So you were saying weather modification and then you were starting to cut off.
Okay. Did you hear what I said about weather modification?
Yeah. So you said look up weather modification and then something else, and that's when you cut off.
Okay. So what I was saying is that I'd be interested to see one of you go do some research into the scientists who came up with weather modification and what kind of extracurricular activities they were involved in.
Okay.
What were their hobbies? So the Dajjal will come and the animals will grow fat, growth hormones. What's in your milk, guys? Don't you think it's fascinating? Those of you from the Indo-Pak community that are here today, how much taller and larger you are than your dad and your mom. Why is mom 4'10" and dad 5'5" and you're almost 6 foot tall? Because you grew up in America, where we put growth hormones, technology in our milk so that the udders grow fat. And that's exactly what the hadith says. Anyone who worships the Dajjal, he will gift them with the ability to create rain and enlarge their crops and enlarge the animals. And I mean, just take a look at this map, guys. Of all the countries who worship the Dajjal, look how much greener they are than the countries who don't. These are the ones creating rain, and nobody's creating rain over here. Just something to think. Something to think about.
We can't see the screen. Are you sharing the screen?
Oh, I'm sorry, guys. Here I am talking this whole time, and I'm thinking I'm sharing the screen. So once again, growth hormones. Okay. And the map that shows how much greener, meaning full of rain, the places that worship Dajjal are than the places who aren't. Very interesting. We continue. By the way, I'm going to show you the hadith where I'm getting all this from. So I'm not quoting a hadith here, but I'm just quoting the parts of the hadith that are interesting. Okay. Dajjal will cause the earth to bring forth all of its treasures. So Dajjal will pass by an area. Okay. Now remember, guys, don't think about this as Dajjal the person. Like a person, physical person in our world of time and space. Okay. Think about this as the Dajjal that's accessible in the spiritual realm. Okay? That he will pass by an area and it will bring forth all of its treasures, mining technologies that didn't exist before. Now we can pull up rubies and diamonds and coal and natural gas and all of these things. All of this came from the Industrial Revolution. Where did it begin, guys? The island of Britain. Where did Tamim at-Dari have a dream about? An island. An island where Christianity was laying in ruins, a ruined monastery. Britain today, the churches are all being sold to the Muslims. They're turning them into mosques. They're turning them into McDonald's. They're turning them into everything because Christianity is obliterated in Britain today. It's a ruined monastery. It's an island. Furthermore, he will kill a man and bring him back to life. Life support technology. A voice from Dajjal will enter every house and take every child by prisoner. Internet, television, and smartphones. He will come with a mountain of bread and water. These are all hadith about Dajjal, guys. Look at the sheer amount of comfort food today that is made from wheat. Like the world, I mean, you guys got to understand 150 years ago, all the things that you love, the pizzas and the sliced bread and none of that stuff was around. I mean, they had bread, but bread was very difficult to come by. You had to grow the wheat. You had to pound the wheat. You had to make it. I mean, it was not just like you went just to the bread guy down the road, like I can do here in Egypt. But now bread is everywhere. It's in everything. All the sandwich places, and it's mountains of bread that are available to people today that in the past were not available because it's a very difficult commodity to come by in the pre-modern world. He comes with a mountain of bread and water. He will bring a man's parents back to life, and that will speak to him. Cloning technology. Now, would you guys like to see this hadith for yourself so you know that Brother Isa is not making this up? Go to the hadith of Ibn Majah. He has a chapter called Bab Fitnatil Dajjal wa Khuruj Isa ibn Maryam wa Khuruj Ya'juj wa Ma'juj. This very, very, very long hadith. We're not going to read it all. Discusses everything I mentioned for the most part. It's very long hadith. But it's going to mention all of those various things that I talked about. But you have to understand what you're reading. Don't think about Dajjal as just a physical person. Think about him as an accessible spiritual force that people will worship throughout the ages, from the time of Nuh until today, that will allow him to build a society on earth which he can come and easily rule over. Okay? And appear to be God. What does God do? He brings rain. What can Dajjal now do? We can see it with our own eyes. He can modify the weather. What does Allah say in the Quran? He causes the crops to grow, right? Now you have Monsanto patenting genes of new crops that can grow bigger and fatter and larger. What is it? Dajjal comes with a paradise and a hellfire. How does Allah describe paradise, guys? As a place in which rivers run underneath your feet. What has Dajjal done today? Look at your plumbing system in your house, guys. It's rivers of water running under your feet. You can walk up to a tap and turn it on. In the pre-modern world, this didn't exist, guys. You wanted water, you had to go to a well. I'd be interested to see the scientist who came up with modern plumbing. What did he do for fun? Was he like Aleister Crowley and Jack Parsons? Do you understand what I'm getting at here, guys?
Yeah, I do, actually.
I'm drilling this point home. I know for some of you, you're getting frustrated with me. You're like, he just keeps saying the same thing over and over. Because, guys, if you don't penetrate this information, the meaning behind it, if you don't understand that Dajjal can exist in the world, not as a person, if you don't understand that Dajjal is not going to be coming with one eye and kafir written on his forehead, but that you have to be a believer in the revelation to see that this is a kafir. If you don't understand these keys, guys, this knowledge will never make any sense to you. It's always going to sound like Disneyland. A guy that's so big that only his foot gets wet when he steps in the ocean. He hops between the heavens. It's going to sound crazy to you. You're never going to believe it until you penetrate it. Until you penetrate. And that's why the prophet is giving us all these hadiths about the days of Dajjal being like a year and a month and a week. The illiterate being able to read. Allah's commanding us to think in the Quran. Okay? Brother Dawood, is this the stuff that you were hoping I would finally talk about? Is it? Tell me. Otherwise, I'm wasting my time today. I tried to do this lesson specifically for you.
For Brother Dawood?
Isn't he the one last week who said he wanted me to talk more about the different hadith about signs of the hour?
Oh, I think you confused me, Bilal.
I mean, Bilal. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I suppose so. Yeah, I definitely would like to. I mean, I've been taking notes all this time, just like with the smile on my face. I wanted to see more prophecies.
Okay, good. Go look up that hadith, okay? Read the whole thing for yourself, okay? Just go to sunnah.com, okay? Or you can just type in Dajjal brings rain in Google, and I think this is the first thing that comes up. Read this whole hadith, guys. Read it. Read the Arabic if you can read the Arabic, because it's very important. It's pivotal for you to understand this subject, okay? All right. Let's see. There's one more thing I wanted to show you guys. Okay, next week, inshallah, because we've been going for about an hour now. Next week, we're going to kick into the 10 major signs, and we're going to try and understand some of these specifically. What are they? What is the prophet talking about? And one of them is going to take us a lot of time to talk about. And I know Brother Addy's going to be very happy because when I get to this one, we're going to talk about Ya'juj wa Ma'juj. Okay? Because this is like, after understanding Dajjal, the concept of Dajjal, understanding Ya'juj and wa Ma'juj is very important. Because if you don't get these two subjects, once again, you're going to be lost when it comes to signs of the hour. Because the average Muslim scholar today is not giving us a proper understanding of these subjects. And there's a good reason why they've not come to the right conclusions. It has a lot to do with the fact that at one point in the history of our religion, people stopped thinking and they simply just began regurgitating information. Okay. Like there was a time in our ummah where like thinking about the revelation was very important and very much a part of the religion. But at some point, we just simply gathered all this information together and we said, okay, well, let's just tell people what's already been said. And that's basically the last 500 years of Islam, is that we're just regurgitating like parrots all the things that have been said in the past. And once again, I'm not criticizing the concept of preservation of knowledge in Islam. It's very important that we have this parrot element in our religion to preserve the authenticity of the information that came from the messenger and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But the thinking part has to be there. How many times in the Quran does Allah ask us to think and ponder and reason and this, and especially for the scientifically minded Western academic mind, like this is a challenge from Allah. If all our religion is just relating hadith literally and memorizing and reciting Quran perfectly, then there's no thinking. Like for example, the concept of tafsir. Tafsir, I just open a book and I read. There's no thinking involved. But what we're trying to do tonight with these classes is I'm not just here to just parrot for you guys hadith. You can go look. You don't need me to do that. Guys, all you have to do is type in signs of the hour and you can spend the next 3 weeks reading every single hadith that exists about signs of the hour. But how is that going to help you? It's not going to help you penetrate the subject or understand it or apply it to your life or try to use it to help guide others to the truth. That's what we're trying to do with these classes. is we're trying to take this information, which you can go access on your own. You don't need me to compile it for you, and think about it and see if it's happening and increase our faith so much so that we can tell others. That's what I'm hoping that you guys will get out of this. And I don't want to just be this guy who comes every week and teaches this class. I want you guys to be people who teach classes in the future, just like my teacher who taught me. You know, go get this book also, Signs of the Last Day in the Modern Age. Okay, a lot of them are talked about in here. Very good book. Signs of the Last Day in the Modern Age. Okay, it's an Islamic book, a series of essays. A lot of good ones mentioned in here. The Prophet mentions, for example, that a time will come in the future where a people will emerge who eat with their tongues like cows. Here's a very interesting hadith, guys. Who doesn't eat with their tongue? I mean, you literally can't put a piece of food in your mouth except that it touches your tongue at some point. Okay? What is the Prophet trying to tell us here? Allahu a'lam, but a people who will come in the future whose primary motivation for eating is not the sustenance of their body, but it is the feeling they get from the taste of the food.
Yeah, I was thinking gluttony. Was that what he was getting at?
Bingo! The
Yeah.
people will no longer eat food for the sustenance of their body. They'll eat food for the taste of it. Okay? The endorphins that are released in their brain when they bite into that McDonald's cheeseburger with the ketchup on the fries, right? And the MSG on their Chinese food and everything. They're eating for taste, not for hunger, right? The Prophet mentioned that one of the signs of the hour is amongst the people will be semen, which is the word for butter. But what he means by it is that fat people will be everywhere. Semen. He says people will have diverse passions near the end of time. Guys, go to the grocery store and look at how many types of Coke, soda are on there's a whole aisle of soda. There's like 100 different flavors. Why do we need so many different flavors? Look at all the different types of gum, right? The options are unprecedented. Like your ancestors just 3 generations ago could not even imagine the number of options you have in the world of food because your passions have been diversified. Look at how many different types of ice cream. It's absurd, the world we live in, really. It's an absurd world of like the Antichrist has given us a paradise where you have everything you want.
And to add on to that, brother, and to add on to that, I think I read somewhere, and this was from a credible source, I'll have to look it up. But if a person lives in New York and tries a different restaurant every single day of their life, every single day they go to a new restaurant, there will still be so many restaurants they haven't visited by the end of their life, almost enough to add up for, I think, I think it was maybe 60 to 70 years worth of restaurants they'll still never have gone to if they go to one restaurant every day.
Right. Guys, the cities are the main places of paradise for Dajjal because that's the center of his technological world that he's created. And remember, the Prophet said he'll visit every city on earth, every village, right? Because that's the places where Dajjal is like, this is like the heart is these cities. And I'm in like one of the biggest cities in the world. I can tell you, I can get anything I want here. It's all here. You know, it's actually unbelievable how easy it is to get things here. And I'm someone who grew up in the countryside, so I'm not used to having all this convenience. Okay, so your homework, guys, is to go look up Jack Parsons and read about him. Go look up Aleister Crowley and read about him. Go look up Freemasonry and read about Freemasonry and its symbols. Okay? Because I want you guys to understand this is so important. Just like last week, I was beating you over the head to get you to understand that Dajjal's main thing is a visual auditory deception in which things appear to your eyes a certain way, but they aren't that way. And that when you read these hadith, you have to not look at them literally. Today, I'm beating you over the head to tell you that Dajjal is here right now. He's been released. But he's not here as a physical person yet. So a lot of these hadith that you read about Dajjal and the signs of the hour, they don't require Dajjal to be here as a physical person. So when the messenger mentions, Allah and the messenger mention Dajjal passing by or stepping in or doing this, don't require of that he be a physical person here for those hadith to be true. And then you're going to start seeing them all around you. Okay, so next week, as I mentioned, we're going to move on from Dajjal to Ya'juj wa Ma'juj and some of the other signs of the hour. Eventually, this class will culminate in us talking about Jesus, okay? Because the three most important subjects for you to understand when studying the last hour is Dajjal, Ya'juj wa Ma'juj, and Isa alayhi salam, okay? We're also going to be peppering in more signs of the hour, okay? But on your own free time, and also it's not like a required homework assignment, is go just read all of the hadith about Dajjal. And you're going to start seeing, I mean, really amazing things like the really long hadith that I mentioned, you guys all go read. This is required homework, by the way. You have to go to sunnah.com and read this long hadith from Ibn Majah about Dajjal. Because in it, you're going to see that Dajjal, part of his fitna is that, look, I'm just telling you so you understand. Part of his fitna is that he causes the sky to rain, right? He causes the udders to grow fat on the cattle, okay? All the stuff I mentioned to you guys earlier. And I think in this particular hadith, he mentions that a man will leave his house and his thigh will speak to him about what's going on in his home. And remember, this hadith is connected to Dajjal. When I tell you that Dajjal comes and he appears to you as God, what is God? God is all-knowing. He knows everything. So how is Dajjal, who's not God, he's not all-knowing, how is he able to appear to be all-knowing? It's because, look, you've been walking around your whole life with this thing in your pocket with a microphone attached to it that can record everything that you say and do. It has your location data, where you go, what your interests are, everything you're thinking, you type into this. This is all going to a server somewhere, guys. A server for who? By the way, a server is just another word for worshiper. But the point I'm trying to make is this thing is on your thigh all day collecting data about you, intimate data that no one knows about you but you. And it can be used against you one day to make someone appear to know things about you that you know there's no way for them to know. But this is how they know. Dajjal's not God. He's not all-knowing. He's just been collecting data about you. But you say, oh, but this thing is so great, I can do this and that. Yeah, Dajjal gives you ajr. But you have to participate in his Jannah first. You have to worship him. And he gives you everything you want in exchange for your soul, of course. And we'll talk about at the very end of these classes, how do we respond to all this? Because it's going to become very obvious to all of you very soon that you're in Dajjal's Jannah and that you're participating in his world. And it's going to start to really bother your faith a lot. Because if you're a practicing Muslim at all, you know that being involved with Dajjal at all is no good for your afterlife. So how do we as believers respond? ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا يا مولانا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا وحبيبنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين اللهم ربنا زدنا علما اللهم أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه. Oh Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, let us see truth as truth and follow it. Let us see falsehood as falsehood and keep us away from it. Increase us in knowledge. Accept from us this dars tonight. And oh Allah, اللهم إنا نعوذ بك من عذاب جهنم ومن عذاب القبر ومن فتنة المحيا والممات ومن شر فتنة المسيح الدجال. Oh Allah, we ask you to save us from the punishment of Jahannam, the punishment of the grave, the trials of life and death, and of course the evil trial of the Antichrist. Ya Arhamar Rahimin. So, any other questions, comments, or concerns?
Yeah, Sheikh. So just to make sure we know what to do for next time, I just quickly jotted these notes down. Just look up, if we have time, look up Freemasons, the great work. What is the great work? Worshipping the great architect, Jack Parsons, how he contacted a demon named Belial Dajjal, recognize the stages of Dajjal, like the British conquering the world, British spies everywhere, like Lawrence of Arabia, and then how World War II made US the dominion of Earth, and how both of them allowed Jews to control and Israel, and the idea that they won't accept a Messiah that doesn't control from Israel. Inverted pentagram from Washington D.C. Look at the significance of that, and then the history of weather modifications, and more specifically the scientists who developed them and their personal hobbies, and then visit the hadith you were mentioning from Sunnah.com. The guy that had the hadith, was it Ibn Majah?
Ibn Majah is in his book.
Right. Okay,
Really, what Ibn Majah has done is he's actually he's taken like a bunch of like separate pieces of the puzzle and he put them in one long narration. Okay. I don't know if he did that intentionally or if he's narrating it from someone who did that. But basically, those are all separate hadith that are compiled into one main narration. Gotcha. Meaning that most likely the Prophet had a dars one day where he mentioned all these things. Okay. And then people recalled different pieces of it and he put it back together later on. Or it was just one amazing companion who memorized the whole dars and now he's narrating it. I'm not sure which one is the case. But the point is that it covers most of the information you need to know about Dajjal. That's the one required homework. You have to go read that long hadith, okay? Everything else, I highly recommend you do as homework because it will help you penetrate the meaning of some of these really difficult hadith about Dajjal's time on the earth and, you know, that kind of stuff.
And also to understand that the Dajjal, like the one-eye thing you were pointing out before, like on the dollar bill, how it's kind of like these, I don't want to say events throughout time, but how he kind of, I guess, influenced things throughout time. And of course,
remember, Noah warned his people about Dajjal. Why? Why would he even have to say anything to them? Why would Solomon have to tell them about Dajjal, right? If it wasn't something people were already involved in, if Dajjal wasn't always something that's been there that people have been trying to access, you know, that's the only way that makes sense.
I just have a comment, Sheikh, or a question, I guess. I mean, real quick, I know you could talk a lot about this, so, I mean, class is over, but the dollar bill, the one eye being on a pyramid, I mean, doesn't that kind of, to me, it resembles, you know, Fir'aun, who acted like he was God, you know?
Yes, I was just discussing this today. I have a Christian friend that we talk a lot about the Antichrist. And he tells me things about what Christianity says about him, and I tell him about what Islam. And he mentions, I told him today that Fir'aun is the archetype of Dajjal in the Quran. Because Fir'aun, interestingly enough, he actually doesn't claim to be God in the Quran as much as he claims to be the Rabb. He says, Ana Rabbukum al-A'la. I am the Lord Most High. And what is the Rabb? He's your sustainer. He's the sovereign over the land, right? So Fir'aun was setting himself up as like, you guys all depend on me, right? And I think that's what Dajjal ultimately will do when he comes, is he will reveal that he's always been with us, that all of the technology that we have today is because of him, and that we would be nothing without him. And people will say, yes, Dajjal, you are the Rabb, right? And that so Fir'aun is a historical figure, but Fir'aun for us also represents Dajjal in the Quran, because it represents the mentality that creates Dajjal and the people who will worship Dajjal, the arrogance inside of human beings that causes them to think they're better than others. When Allah says, وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي Adam, that he's honored every single son of Adam, that he breathed into them their souls. they all have the divine spark inside of them. There's no chosen people. There's no one who's the sovereign Lord over all. And by the way, guys, all of this is going to prepare you. I'm trying to prepare you like I'm preparing my own self, and eventually my family. I would love to teach all of this to my family one day. But the point is, that this is going to be a reality in your lives, guys. It's going to be your faith is going to be tested by this whole signs of the hour and Dajjal and everything. It's the most important subject to study today, I think, because it informs us. But yes, an interesting thing happened in history. Firaun, his body was discovered, I believe, in 1897. And at the exact same time Firaun's body was discovered, the Zionist movement began in Europe. Because the Zionist movement would eventually create the same circumstances of Firaun, a society divided into those who are better than everyone else and everyone else. Because Firaun divides up society, Allah says in the Quran. And it will create a people who think they are better than everyone else, a Firaunic mentality. And yet those people will perish exactly the way Firaun perished. They will be led without them even realizing it to their own destruction. Firaun literally tried to get rid of the very thing that would destroy him, but he ended up raising him in his own house. And that's why I actually believe Imam al-Mahdi will be someone who grows up in Palestine, who speaks Hebrew and Arabic. He will literally be someone from the same area that he'll eventually conquer. But that's my own theory, and I haven't really fleshed it out yet. But yes, very important to study in the Quran Pharaoh, because it will help enlighten you a lot about Dajjal.
And finally, the book you said to get was The Signs of the Last Day in the Modern Age. Who was the author?
The author is Imran Hussein. That he wrote this back in some of it in the 90s and some of it in the early 2000s. It's a very kind of thick book, one of the thicker of his books. But it focuses a lot on the subject we're talking about during this class. And he's one of the few authors, I think, who's really tried to do what we're doing, which is to see these things happening around us, to take these hadith and see if this is what's happening. We can see it for ourselves, right? And the classic example I'll keep going back to is the flying donkey, right? If you just read the text flying donkey, well, you're gonna look around, look, no flying donkeys, let's go back to sleep, right? Until you penetrate the meaning and you're like, oh my God, the flying donkeys are everywhere. I've literally flown on one myself, right? Then it becomes real. And then the light comes on inside of you and you're like, whoa, right? That's what Imran Hussein is trying to do with this book. He's trying to take this knowledge and make it applicable to your real life to increase your faith and protect you.
Yeah, I think a big part of that is understanding how the prophet would be able to explain these things to his people. And then how, I mean, obviously, like a real life flying donkey isn't like people of his time can't think of what an airplane would be like other than explaining it as a flying donkey, because donkeys were used as transportation. Whereas us, we know that a flying donkey is an airplane. So I would think it wouldn't be that hard to get that understanding across.
Yeah, but you gotta ask yourself, am I not the first person who's ever explained it to you that way? When's the last time your imam told you this? When's the last time you heard a scholar on YouTube say these things?
No, yeah, that's true. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to continue these lectures more, is because other than you, have you heard of Muhammad Hijab?
Yeah, I know who he is.
Yeah. So I listen to a lot of his lectures, and he sometimes brings up some of this stuff, and like he has pretty good videos on the prophecies that Rasulullah talked about, and it's a really interesting things that he goes into. But it's kind of pretty much the same thing you're talking about.
Yeah, I'm not sure what he said. The two people I know who speak about these things are Hamza Yusuf and Imran Hussein. There's another brother from Britain named Bilal something, maybe Bilal Salim or something like that. I think, but
Bilal,
he has a
Asad, right?
yeah, maybe, but he tends to stick to the literal interpretation more than anything. But I'm very impressed with Hamza Yusuf's ability to penetrate the meaning. Like when Hamza Yusuf mentioned the hadith about the tabaq, the dishes that will be communicating continuously, and people will cut their family ties. Like that, he explains is satellite communication, which allows people to use their smartphones and their computers and watch TV. But the result of that, though, is that it disconnects us from each other. So the amount of time people spend with their families prior to the invention of satellite communication compared to time after is drastically different, guys. Like if you didn't have your laptop and your cell phone and your TV, you would spend way more time with your family. Way more time with your family. But because you have these things, we're all separated from them all the time. You know, we might see mom and dad 5 minutes out of the day, say a few words to them, and then we're back to the technology. So for him to penetrate the meaning of that the dishes, because that's the word the Prophet uses. He uses tabaq. He doesn't use sahan. A sahan is a flat dish, but a tabaq is like a bowl, kind of. So for him to understand that's what the Prophet is actually saying here, is that the dishes will communicate continuously and people will cut their family ties as satellite communication, is amazing to me. Because basically he's nailing the meaning. He's saying like, no, this is the meaning. It's just like when I've cried listening to that lecture before, just because it's like, it's just mind-blowing the Prophet said this stuff. Or the
Hamza Yusuf?
Yeah.
Okay. And who was the other one? Hamza Yusuf and Imran
Hussein.
Imran Hussein, got it.
Yeah. He's the one that wrote the book I'm recommending to you.
Yep.
And by the way, if you want to understand the subject of Dajjal, he's him and Hamza Yusuf are the best. Hamza Yusuf has a lecture called The Devil's Traps on YouTube. If you watch that, it'll blow your mind. But that Imran Hussein wrote a book called Jerusalem in the Quran, where he talks about the stages of Dajjal. And he's the one who came up with the idea that Dajjal worked first with Britain, secondly with the United States, and eventually he'll work solely with Israel to conquer the world. And he's also the first author, I believe, to come up with the idea of Dajjal existing as in another world of space and time that we can access. And I'm trying to tie all that in with other authors I know, like David Icke. He's a non-Muslim, and there's Dr. Omar Zaid, who's a guy like me who became Muslim, who really writes a lot of books about the secret societies. I've been gathering this information I'm teaching you guys for over a decade. So a little bit of it is unique to me, but mostly I'm just telling you what I've learned from other teachers. All right, we've gone on for now an hour and a half. We need to go ahead and get out of here. Jazakallah khair for coming in. We'll see you next week. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك ونشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت ونستغفرك ونتوب إليك. And at the end we say Allah and His Messenger knows best about the signs of the hour. And Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam
wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.